Great. Thanks a lot, Ricardo. And it's great to be here, and great to have you here as well, Linda. So now you can ask me, we can talk about the piece, and you have witnesses, so I won't be able to lie about anything. I'll pretend that I did more than I did. But we're presenting a piece tonight called The Raft Breaks. It's the first piece in the concert. So I haven't brought anything to show because that'll be the show part. So maybe we'll do a little bit of tell and explanation first. So we started the piece in 2017. I knew it was a piece for Linda, so I wanted to go to where she's from to try and gather materials for the project. So we went to Poznan and
in Poland,
and we got a lot of material, but it wasn't clear at that point what the piece was going to be exactly. And over time, it became clearer and clearer that there were a few different competing threads. One is sort of somewhat political. So the title, The Raft Breaks, it's from one of Ezra Pound's poems. Does anyone know who Ezra Pound was? So he was an editor and a poet, and a famous fascist, actually. Yeah. So he wrote this poem in prison. He was in prison. He was American. He was imprisoned by the Americans at the end of the Second World War. And they kept him in a cage on an airstrip because he'd been broadcasting propaganda for the fascists. And he wrote that the raft broke and the waters ran over him. And he had like a breakdown. And I thought that was an interesting, sorry, we got very heavy very quickly, but I thought that was an interesting first thread of this project because without Ezra Pound, there would be no modernism, there'd be no T.S. Eliot, there'd be no Joyce. But he was an abhorrent human being, right? And I thought for a long time about whether I wanted to include that text in the piece, and it seemed that actually the world's kind of complicated, and I think that social media has made it very simple, but actually the world is a complicated place, and I like the idea of using this text as a way of talking about the political situation a little bit in Poland and ours, increasingly, and in other parts of the world, right? So that was one thread. The pitch material from the piece came from church services that we recorded while we were there.
Because I have a very complicated relationship with Catholic Church. So we went to a few masses, we recorded organs, yes.
But the other thread was really about environmental destruction in a very personal, local way. Because one of the things we filmed was a forest near where Linda's family had a cottage. So we filmed the forest and we recorded it. And
in
then,
July 2017.
yeah.
Yes.
And
then in August 2017, a month later, a hurricane of, I think, a force of 120 kilometers per hour, which is very unusual for this part of the world. Cut, it's through Europe, some parts of Europe, but cut really right through the village where we have the house, and the space of 5 hours destroyed everything. So it was unusual, an anomaly for that geographic location as a direct result of climate change and currently called crisis now. And then my parents had to cut down everything, as all the trees and all the locals. So now there's basically like a bare field, which will prove even more difficult for the community to fend itself from other winds and natural disasters if they come, because trees have this, they are like a natural fence. So it was quite powerful of an event not to include in this piece, and therefore it became this unknowingly multi-layered representation of various, I would say, cultural and global problems.
So, and there are only 2 shots in the piece. The first shot is the one that we have of the forest as it was, which we didn't know at the time, obviously. And the second shot is a digital recreation of the forest. Now, so the premiere of this piece was in October, was it? And I finished this digital recreation last week. So this will be the first time that we do it with the full video, because it turned out to be it's such a simple idea. You know, you have a simple idea, build a forest, how hard could it be? It's really hard, it turns out, because we wanted it to look uncanny. And the piece is kind of a lot about that uncanniness in a way that a lot of my pieces are, really. In the Freudian sense, where something is unsettling because it's familiar and strange at the same time. And I hope that you see that tonight. And that's why I didn't want to show it to you this afternoon, so that you're a little bit fresh for it. So in a sense, that's one of the digital overlays that we use. The other is in the setup of the piece, because it's a solo piece. The temptation is to have all of the electronic sound in the speakers. So you have the real performer, and then you have this disembodied computer, digitally mediated voice in the space alongside it, right? But I wanted more of a dialogue between 2 embodied voices. Or maybe dialogue's the wrong word, maybe it's more of a seance or something. But so alongside Linda, there's another violin hanging. And that, in a sense, is the physical embodiment of the digital space of the work. So a lot of the sound that you'll hear that's electronic comes through this real object, even though it's electronic. So it's kind of physical and digital in one object in one part of the room. You know, that was the intention there. And I guess that's kind of it for the general explanation. So, what do you think?
I guess, I don't know, are there any immediate questions about the process or... Like,
it's kind of hard, isn't it? Because they haven't heard it yet.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe they'll have questions later.
Yes.
What kinds of instruments did you use?
Instruments, you mean...
What did you use to produce the sound?
So Sam is by trade an electroacoustic composer, acousmatic.
I was.
I'm
just going to whisper that into
He did what he said here, and we walked a lot around the city, and we went also, my parents drove us to the countryside where we recorded, we did field recordings. And then Sam spent a long time in the studio analyzing the recordings, deriving pitch, like sonic material, deciding upon the pitch content and creating the tape part of the piece, and then building the whole spectrum of the work upon the field recordings that we created. So they are when I practice it and when I heard for the first time the tape, I actually could detect, or they are processed, but some I could detect where they are from, which part of the excursion. So to me, when I play it, it is very much like a trip back home. Of course, I knew where we were because we were walking together and filming and everything. So because I was showing some the sites and telling him the stories about these sites, so that we could go through the psychogeographic process together. And that, I think, after the trip, he told me, now I understand you a little bit better. I don't know, it was a compliment, but I guess he meant more like he saw the very, very, I don't know, heteronormative culture, masculine culture. And he thought he understood me somehow better. And also, I guess, a very like religious culture, I don't know. So we,
very conservative in
Yes.
lots of ways, increasingly so. But I think that's a problem for all of us, right? Like it seemed like it was a problem for one part of the world, and now it has become everyone's problem to deal with, I think. So I've got a question for you.
yes.
So you're driving this machine, right? Like you're in the middle of it and you're moving it forward. Do you feel like in this, not this piece specifically, but in general, as a performer who works a lot with technology, as well as being a specialist, obviously, in your acoustic instrument, what's the boundary there where you, like, how do you navigate that without becoming just subsumed by setups and technology and stuff in the room that isn't you? You know, how do you feel about that?
Well, the difficult part is that I was thinking a little bit about like the privilege of actually accessing technology that we have in this part of the world. When you were saying about the sustainable goals, and I was thinking, oh, what about people in Africa who actually even don't have electricity, and how would that technology be available to them, and how big a gap that this create? So the biggest problem of working with anything electronic is just being able to hear the sound that you're making, and for that one has to have the opportunity to work in that manner, have the space and have the setup and quite good speakers and all that. And I'm quite lucky because we are part of this ensemble together. So I, in my flat in Huddersfield, store all our equipment. And also I'm a PhD student at the university, which also makes it easier for me to access the infrastructure and have access to whatever rooms or even equipment if I needed it and didn't own it currently. But before we had a bit more gear at hand, I played other pieces of electronics, and it was incredibly difficult because I didn't have resources and access to these things, so I could not really practice at a level where I would fully engage in the production of sound and not that be two different parts. So I couldn't listen to the sound I was making, and still sometimes it is difficult to get that symbiotic relationship with electronics. I think it's possible, but it requires space and yes, resources. Time is not even really the issue. It's just can I really practice with all that setup and hear myself being having full agency over the production of sound. And that's the tricky thing. Yeah.
There's but just thank you, Ricardo. But just before, there's this William Gibson quote that I always love, which is that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed, and I think that's very, very true. But yeah, Ricardo.
I have a question for Linda. I mean, beyond the fact that sound took forever to do this, sort of recreate the trees, the forest.
Yes.
I guess
not forever, just 6 months.
You say it was a very long process. It was more than you anticipated, right?
Oh God, yeah.
For me, what I understood is that you felt like this terrible loss. You sort of the backyard, all the trees gone, and
yes.
barefoot space.
I mean, mostly because my mother is so heartbroken she can't return to this place, and she loved this place. So
exactly.
for me, it's quite sad.
So, but do you think by sound recreating this virtually somehow, not just saying, "Oh, here it is, you can have it back," but putting this in the context of your actual performance space, do you feel some sense of healing?
I think it is. Sam gave me a great gift because he wrote a very personal piece, which is about my life. And when I practice, I really. It's not like reading a diary, but it is it's like an emotional experience. I do really like practicing this piece. But he did one other thing. I have not yet seen the trees because this is the thing. You see, he just finished and we recorded, and I'm with my back behind, and I don't practice with video. So I have not yet seen it. So when we record it, I'm gonna watch this. So I'm sure I'm gonna experience the whole wholeness of the performance. And I'm sure I'm going to have some emotional rapport to it. But the most important thing that he did is that he incorporated at the end of the first movement for I think 3 minutes, or is it how many minutes? 3 minutes. The sound of the forest. And today it's gonna be in this incredible immersive system. For the first time, I'm gonna hear those trees sounding on 50 speakers, as if when I was a child, running in that forest. So that's and every time I because I have to set everything up and then put the session and queue up on. When I'm like faffing around with stuff, I put that queue with the trees. That's when I know that everything works. And I listen to it for like 5 minutes at home. Sometimes I do it just for fun, not to practice, just to hear the sound.
Well, and because we recorded it with B format by Ambisonics. We didn't know that we would need it in that way, but that's what we did. So we have a surround recording of it. But it was thank you, Linda. That's a great compliment. But it was in terms of the video, it was this Houdini kind of bottomless hole of tutorials that were broken and panicking, and weeks of just simulating. So it was really really crazy, but I think it worked out well, and I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Thank you.
Yes.